Unshelling Medicine podcast. Healthcare in the language we understand.
Hello, good day, everybody. Welcome again to a dynamic conversation. We're very holistic, we're very integrative, and we are always talking about ways to heal the human body and to go through the human life experience. This is that conversation. I am fortunate, very blessed, and grateful to have with us today Santa Molina Marshall. She is an holistic psychotherapist and life coach. So the conversation today is going to be one that we praise healing and we pray brings blessings and also resources for those people seeking. We find that the human experience is that we may have that nagging need, but we don't know who to ask or where to first to ask. So I bring the conversation brings light to somebody and also an avenue to reach out as a resource. Hi, Santa Molina. Welcome.
Hello. I'm so glad to be here and also feeling just really blessed and grateful to have this conversation broadcasted and to bring hope and healing to the world because God knows that we need it.
We need it. We do. We absolutely do. This is a much needed conversation. Let's talk about you and your journey because it's not easy to be a healer. It is a line of work that exposes you to a lot and also a line of work that expects you or is expected that you take yourself out and be empathetic in the moment in talking to somebody. So how has that journey been like coming here? Was it a personal experience or it was just a calling that you felt like this is a journey you should embark on?
Yeah. People ask me, did you choose to be a healer, a social worker, a medicine woman, or did it choose you? And I believe that it chose me. I believe that it chose me way before I chose the family that I was born into. Because I was born into a family that had a lot of trouble. We're from the Dominican Republic, migrated to the United States when I was 3. I'm about to be 64. So I've been on this planet for a while. And I think that just migrating to this country can be both a gift, but also a challenge. And for my family, it was a challenge. My parents did not speak English. We come from a family of 8 children, and they brought us all out to this country a little bit at a time, but we finally all made it here. And one of the things that I noticed early on is that my father, who was the breadwinner back home in the Dominican Republic, was now unemployable. My father, who worked as a masonry for the state of the Dominican Republic, the capital, Santo Domingo, now had to do odds and ends jobs when he could get them. And my father never worked for anyone while he was in the United States, both because of the language and also because of his stubbornness. But it really did create a sense of other and a sense of less than. My mother, who was a stay-home mom in the Dominican Republic, a seamstress, well-known, well appreciated, became a factory worker, and she couldn't keep up when she got here, not knowing the language, not understanding the system. So I grew up on public assistance. People joke about the yellow bus. I grew up taking the yellow school bus. I grew up in New York City just living what felt like, why is everybody else better off? Although I grew up in a community, I wish I was there now, on 84th in Amsterdam, in New York City, where everyone was kind of having the same struggle. The brown, black community. And that's what I come from. So I grew up into a family that had mental illness. My father was a very functional alcoholic. That's not the reason why he didn't have work, because my father worked very hard, multiple jobs, hustler. We sold food and clothing and booze and you name it, my daddy did it. But he was an alcoholic. He drank every weekend. He was a functional alcoholic. My mother was depressed, never would have called her depressed then, but she stayed in bed often, just not being able to face the world. A brother with mental illness. I had a brother who was homeless, pushing the shopping carts in the streets, thinking he was Nixon and Hare Krishna and you name it. Lived most of his life at Manhattan Psychiatric Center with schizophrenia. Manhattan Psychiatric Center for the Criminally Insane. And so the story goes on and on and on. And I'm a child, unfortunately, a child survivor of sexual abuse. And I like saying this, and I hope this is not a shock to anybody. I don't say it to trigger anyone, so I'm giving a little bit of a trigger warning. Most predators are seen as men. My predators, my abuser was my sister, my eldest sister and her husband. And that's what I remember because my sense is that there may have been abuse even earlier on prior to that. So I knew growing up in my home that I thought I wanted to be a lawyer. Why? Because I had to get everybody out of trouble. I'm a caretaker. That's how I come to this profession. I come to this profession with a commitment to take care of others. Yeah, it's hard to be a professional in this field and not want to take people home with you, not want to do it for others. So that was the first thing I needed to learn is that I can only do it for myself. So in my early years at social work school at Hunter College, the very first professor I had in a human development class said at the end of the class, now you all go out and get a therapist.
Yeah.
And I heard him and I got a therapist. And I'm very grateful that I did. I got a woman who was able to hear my story and to tell me it's not your fault. You were a kid. They were adults. This is not supposed to happen. But I also found that it wasn't enough, that after years and years of talk therapy and lots of studies, both a master's in social work and lots of certifications, that I needed something else. So as a result, I'm just going to list some things. I'm not bragging. It just is what it is. I'm a yoga teacher. I am an herbalist. I have studied aromatherapy, crystals. I'm an interfaith minister. I'm a massage therapist. I'm a Reiki master. Why? Because these are the things that I was seeking. I became a yoga teacher seeking another way of worshiping God because I grew up Catholic, but in my home, in the illness that I now understand was my home, the incubator for dysfunction, we got cursed to go to church. Damn it, get out of the house, go to church Sunday mornings because my parents just wanted to get rid of us. So I just thought something's off. And then God is white. I don't get it. I just didn't get it. We had the big Christ on, and why is he on the cross? Wasn't he the Son of God? Like, I didn't understand. And of course, people would say to me, and in most recent years, people would say, well, you studied the Bible. I've studied the Bible. And it is that said to me, God is omnipresent, omnipotent, and God cannot be boxed in one faith. So I'm an interfaith minister. I think I mentioned that because I was seeking help, seeking resources. I'm a holistic psychotherapist because I know that all of the things that I've mentioned are things that I've practiced and that were helpful to me. If I stayed with just talking, I would have a head full of information and a broken heart and soul. So it is throughout time. And I don't believe that I'm healed. There's no such thing as I am healed. I am healing every day, open to discovering, staying curious. And the last thing that I added to my repertoire of what do I need to help others was somatic experiencing, understanding the nervous system, understanding how the brain and the nervous system is impacted by trauma. So as a result, I combine all of that. And that's why I call myself a holistic psychotherapist. Often people think, oh, that means you're into holistic food and medicine. No, that means I'm into everything. My job is to say to the person who comes to me, all right, you are here because you know some things. What do you know? What's your practice? What did your family practice? What's your lineage? What about going back as far back as you can think of? What about your grandmas in this? And I'm not trying to speak badly about this country. I've been here for over 60 years and it has given me quite a bit, but it has also stripped, and that's what I noticed. It strips people of who they are and what their skills are and tries to replace them with things that were mine to begin with, but you're telling me they weren't mine and now I got to pay you to get them and study to get them. I am sick and tired of people taking what was mine and repackaging it and presenting it to me like it's new to me. And that's what I help people do. I help people to really identify what is healing for you? What works for you? What do you need? I like saying, and this is the last thing I'll say because you only asked me one question and I go on and
I
on and
love.
on,
No, I
right?
love.
But I like saying, if you're a person of prayer, we're going to pray. We're going to
Mhm.
call on God. But if you're not, we're going to chant. And if you don't like chanting, then we're going to stop. Like, what works for you, beloved? That's what I say to my clients. What works for you? Because you are already a survivor. By the time people come to see me, they've had lots of trauma, unfortunately, because I'm a trauma specialist. Who would have said, right? The kid that got traumatized becomes a trauma specialist. And hear me out. I'm not a wounded healer. I hate that term.
Yeah.
There are a lot of wounded healers out there, but I'm not one of them. I'm a thriving healer.
We absolutely love it, and I'll speak for myself because a lot of what you say hold a lot of value, and it takes, unfortunately, it takes a person with a traumatic experience to understand what it feels like to heal somebody or help somebody in their healing journey, I should say. That is where lived experience comes in. I cannot tell you from a place of ignorance what it feels like to experience whatever, right? And I shared with you, and I've shared with another guest of mine here on this podcast, that I'm also a survivor of abuse, child sexual abuse situation. And it takes a while to heal from that, or to continue learning to heal from that. You learn, you gather all these toolkits and you gather all these things to help you cope. So it is not surprising that in your journey you got all the certification, because there's always something to heal a different part of you that was traumatized. You know, you're talking crystals, you're talking Reiki, you're talking even yoga, all of those movements, all of those, the sounds, the electrical charge that all of those things carry to rejuvenate your body is something that we don't widely discuss. Shortly before we started recording this conversation, you and I talked about religion and how sometimes it kind of contradicts what you learned. So how was that journey for you? Because I know I had to make peace with knowing that God is all present. God does not come in this little box. Everything in the Bible is the fables, the things that you should live by. However, how does that apply to you? So how was that for you, reconciling what you learned as a child, religion, with Christianity, I should say, and everything that you learned along the way, even with crystals, in Reiki, the energy of healing using Reiki, or even with yoga? How was that? Was that a struggle for you, or was that an easy reconciliation?
Well, for me, really, it was a need. I was driven by the desire to be well. I was driven by the desire to, and when I say be well, I didn't understand if there is a God. And again, I don't know if we already said this on the recording or prior. We had the last meal, everybody sitting at the table. That was like the major part of what was on our wall. And then Christ on a cross everywhere. And then part of the heart of Christ, white man, everywhere in our home. And was told, because I grew up in a Catholic home, that this God was punishing, that this God was watching me, that this God, I once in a while they would say, my mother always made the cross. It's a Dominican thing. You ask for blessings before you leave the house. Blessings, Mama. And Mama would say, God bless you, and do the cross on you. Till this day, my sister, who's 10 years older than me, she blesses me as I walk out. So it is a tradition, but I didn't understand. So God was good, but then God's primary job was to keep an eye on us and to make sure that we didn't get away with anything and to punish us. And that was the schizoid experience for me. How is it that God is omnipotent, omnipresent, the Omega, the deal, but God's only responsible for punishment? Like, what about honoring? What about noticing that I'm a good person? What about taking care of me? So there was a lot of contradictions in the way in which I was taught about God. But what I got was that God was this interesting energy being, And I needed to learn about what God meant to me. I also learned at a very early age that it was impossible for something that was so magnificent and so great to be boxed into this small container. Like I just didn't understand. So I made it my business to create a relationship with what I thought God was. That was both, yes, karma, right? That was both going to hold me responsible for what I did that was inappropriate, but also give me lots of grace and lots of love and lots of forgiveness. I decided that a long time ago. And in New York City, I don't think this is the case anymore because of vandalism and theft and all kinds of crimes. The churches, Catholic churches were open. The doors were always open. And I went to Mass. I did my first communion and the whole thing. But I loved walking into the building and just looking around, and it was beautiful and majestic and so unlike my home, and the peace that I felt. So that's how I reconcile. The answer to your question is that's how I reconciled. It's like, oh, God is peace. God is beauty. God is stillness. God is something to adorn, to worship. Because when I walked into those churches, again, on Columbus Avenue, whatever church it was, I just felt at peace. And so that helped me to open up. So where else is peace? Where else is there beauty? God is a tree. God is the earth today. God is Kwayen. God is Buddha. God, I am God.
Yes.
Girl, you taking me to church. I am God. They used to tell me, my parents would say, oh, and we were created in the image of God. That's what they would say at church. And I'm
Mhm.
like, so if I was created in the image of God, then why don't I feel honored, respected, cherished, blessed? And my transition was really understanding the schizoid of what my family praised as well as cursed,
Yeah.
because my dad cursed God almost every day. God was blamed for everything that wasn't going well. That was my understanding. It's like, oh, so now I get what God is. God is everything. God is beauty. And if I may add another little piece here, one of the other things that happened for me was I had a period of time in my life where I got really depressed, and I'm a trauma therapist. All the trauma that I hear people talk about
Yeah.
here. And one of the things that happened to me is that I became really depressed and I became suicidal. You would not know that I was suicidal, but I was driving 50 miles an hour in a 5 mile zone. And you have to read my book. I'm an author of a book. I'm not pushing the book. And it's Memoir of a Spiritual Warrior. That has that story. And I can get back to the story, but talking about God, I just knew. And when I say God, remember, as an adult, I knew God was everything. God was magic. God was the Orishas. God was all that you can think of: saints, angels, crystals, stones, dogs, everything was God. That's how far I came from Catholicism. But during this time, I was so saddened by God. There's a saying, God has taken me this far. God will not drop me. Well, God took me quite a distance, and I felt like God dropped me. God lied. Things that I thought would happen did not happen, despite my dedication, my sacrifice, my hard work, my intelligence. And so I was suicidal throughout all my degrees. This is like nonsense. But I found shortly after, and my friends who know I'm an interfaith minister and I'm a woman of spirit and I'm a medicine woman would call, Santa, we're going to pray for you. I said, pray for yourself because you're foolish believing in this thing called God. That was my response. That's how angry I was. But shortly after, I realized that without belief, that what God is to me truly is hope, but that without hope, I couldn't get out of bed. I didn't want to live. So I said to myself one day, okay, you're going to pretend there is a God. Just pretend so that you can get up, so you can have hope. So that was a while ago. What I know today is that God is hope, and that God is not supposed to make my life easy. He gives me the hope to endure. God gives me the hope to move on. God gives me the hope to believe that things can get better. God is not supposed to make things perfect. There's too much man. There's too much ego for God to be able to do that. But God will make good. I also understand that God has a master plan. God's not just my father. Well, God, what about me? God is all of us, Father. I'll just wrap it up by saying what was my trauma? Sexually abused by my sister and her husband for years has become a blessing to so many today. That's how God works. I'm not saying God wants us to suffer, but when we suffer, God makes good by it. So today I'm like, okay, I get it. God's not here to make Santa feel good. God is here to prepare me so that I can tolerate what we humans create on this planet, the disease, the distress, the violence, and make good by it. That's the God that I serve today. Is a God that's all about love, watching over every single one of us. And I am blessed.
Thank you, Santa, for sharing that. It's a space that I know a lot of people struggle in, and I also struggled in that space. There was a little bit of a sense of guilt in,
Mm, mm,
discovering other ways to know God outside of, the teachings or what I was used to as a child or what I was brought up in. The realization that God is in many forms. God is everywhere around me. God is not just in the books, right? Genesis to Revelation, God is in me. Talking about the God in you is the hope of glory, right? Talking about you were made in God's image. So if the Bible is saying all these things, so there is a truth to this being a being. And I latch on to the believing in better things to come, believing that there's a testimony in this test. That belief is what propels me. You talk about hope. I hoped to the point that hope, for some reason, hope doesn't work for me as much as belief does. Hope for me is passive compared to believing. So if I believe in something, it puts a bit of an action behind it. And
mm.
in your practice, I see that there's a combination of a hope and belief. You hope for better, but you definitely believe in the better happening. So the way that you put it, so it's so brilliant. I want to touch on something that you said earlier on in describing your parents, where your dad, as much as he was a provider, but he was also a functional alcoholic. And your mother, as much as she did her best to keep her warehouse job, she was also in a depressed state. But you wouldn't dare say any of that to them, especially growing up in that household as a child.
You knew what to say and not to
Woo!
say.
Girl.
If you even knew, right? Because when we're in a system, when you grow up in a system, everything seems normalized. That my father drank every weekend and was violent, and that was normal.
Yeah.
I was daddy's little girl. Till this day, I'm daddy's little girl. You don't talk bad about my daddy. So it normalizes
Yeah.
things. And I mean, I hear what you're saying. Not only did we know my father used to give you the look before he gave you the whipping. You knew you were in trouble, but that was normal. Violence was normal. Screaming, cursing God, whatever, everything went. It was normal. I told you, I got to this country at 3 years old. So the way of life was normal. A lot of unlearning.
And is the normalization of things. Is
Mhm.
also, you're talking about things being stripped from people and being repackaged and resold like a brand new idea. So let's dissect that in a way that it affects people in general, because we're talking about psychological warfare here, right? So, and that puts people usually in a very tough position. People that would generally want to do better, however, they find themselves having to survive because that alcohol was a coping mechanism.
Absolutely. Today I know that.
There's not much an individual person can do. However, with the next generation, not to normalize that behavior or to recognize the pattern and to do more to be vocal, because I was born in the 80s. And again, growing up then and growing up now is vastly different. Our girls and young boys are encouraged to speak up more, recognize patterns more or intervene more earlier on in life, as opposed to when we were growing up where things were very normalized, right? Parents with kids with asthma were smoking in their faces and wondering why they were having an asthma attack. But, with education and disseminating information, now we can educate parents that, your smoking is actually one of the contributing factors to the asthma exacerbation for your children. Eliminating trauma of any kind for a child or a growing young adult is a mouthful. Is not realistic. However, how can we help the next generation either intervene earlier on or just advocate for their parents or for themselves to understand, just like your professor told you, seek help, find a therapist. How do we, especially in the Black and brown community, how do we intervene and help the young adults or the children growing up in this environment? So one difference, if mom and dad do not recognize, the sort that these kind of behaviors are causing.
Yeah. Well, the thing that kept going through my mind as you were speaking is when you know better, you do better.
That's right.
When you know better, you do better. My parents did the best thing they could do. I mean, they did an awesome job, despite that's all they had.
Yeah.
That's what they knew how to do.
Yeah.
My dad, you're absolutely right. He drank on the weekend so he can get through the week. My mother slept and slept and slept and ate when she could to comfort herself. So that they were doing better. They were doing what they needed to do. They didn't understand what was going on in this country. That these were new challenges for them. But today, you said you're a baby of the 80s. I'm a
Well,
baby of I'm a baby of the 60s. So I look at my grand nieces and nephews now and I'm like, wow, they're woke. And I don't just use that. They are paying attention. They're noticing. I can talk to my nephew and he listens. He may not do immediately what I suggest, but he's listening. He's watching. It just takes one person. Why I was the chosen one in my family. Hopefully, you will read my book. If I told you my story, I am a miracle that I made it out alive. Yes, I'm old. I'm 63 years old. And so people start dying off when you get to my age. But my family, all of them were gone by my 25th birthday. I have two siblings. There's just three of us left. Everybody died. The children of those siblings died as well. Right? So, but it only takes one to say, I see something different. So, what can we do today? The only thing I can say is please listen to your children, listen to the young people. They need to be heard. They don't always know what they're doing. They think they do, as we all do when
we
we're
all
adolescents,
did at some point. Yeah.
right? Like adolescents, we always think we know what we're doing.
Yeah.
But we have to listen to them, make time to listen. And the other piece is it's okay. This is why, and I'm back to mentioning my book, because this is why I wrote a book. I'm a clinical social worker who ran organizations. I ran organizations, clinical departments where I saw people dropping left and right staff people. Why? Because they've not done their work.
Yeah.
Do your work, own your history, let go of the shame, let go of the shame. Notice the way you eat, the lack of rest, the drinking. Notice how these things impact you. I just believe that we need to take responsibility and let go of the shame. That's where I was going with mentioning the book again. I wanted to write an autobiography. And a woman who was helping me write the book, my coach, she said, who cares about who you are, Santa?
Yeah.
How are you going to sell that book? An autobiography? Who cares about who Santa Molina is? I mean, your family will buy it. And so she said, why not write a memoir about your story, or why not write a how to heal book? And I thought, I don't want to write one more self help book. So I decided to write my story. And in my story, from coming to this country as a child, in my story, I introduce how I was healing. I talk about going into those empty churches. I talk about the friend who said to me, ooh, your daddy was an alcoholic. Do you know there's a thing called ACOA, Adult Child of Alcoholic 12-step programs? You need to go to a meeting. And I thought, because I'm a little bit of a follower, I thought, all right, take me to a meeting. And I learned that my father's drinking, as though as much as I had normalized it, had an impact on me and on our family. So I went to a 12-step meeting. It's free. What am I getting to? That I had to take responsibility for my experience. But the shame, particularly when we are successful business women, whatever, running an agency, or running a clinical program at a rape crisis center, there's so much secrecy. And that's why I wrote my book. It's like, look, I am all these things. Yes, I'm a food addict. My father was an alcoholic. Addiction runs in our family. Guess
Oh,
what I am?
mhm.
I am a food addict.
Say that
And I
again.
always say,
Please repeat that spot because this is the one
I
that
am a food addict,
oh my goodness. People
right?
don't understand addiction. Just because one person was addicted to this thing and you don't have that particular addiction does not mean you don't have the tendency to be addicted to something else. From alcohol to pornography to food to cigarettes to
To
everything.
working, to
Working,
shopping, to violence.
addiction is addiction.
Addiction is such an issue in our society because it's comforting. So my father drank to comfort himself so he could go back out Monday every weekend. And I have eaten and eaten. So, but the point is, it's okay for me to say I'm an addict. Today, I'm okay with saying, yep, I'm an addict and I need help and I go to help. I get the help. So I think that the question of how do we begin to turn the wheel and create a better life for generations to come is own who you are. Let go of the shame. Me being an addict doesn't mean I'm not a successful, effective practitioner.
Hmm?
Me being a childhood sexual abuse survivor doesn't mean I'm a molester. Not everybody has to have a history to be able to support someone. But when I meet with a client, the other thing I say to my clients is, I know all you need to know about symptoms, reactivity, the impact on your nervous system. I have a book. I've written the books. I've read the books, but only you know your experience. You're in charge of your experience. You're in charge of your story. Wow. So I'm here to guide you. I'm here to make offers. I'm here to say, let's be curious about this, that, or the other. I'm not here to judge you because I have my own journey. And I'm not here to tell you how you're going to heal because only you know what works for you. But the shame and the guilt is real.
It
And
is.
I am sick and tired of seeing beautiful people of color successful in all the things that they do. Look at our artists, for God's sake. There was a year when they were just dropping dead, gone, due to whatever, mostly addiction, because it's hard to say, guess what? I need help. And that doesn't mean that I can't help. That doesn't mean that I don't have it going on. Every day is an opportunity. I love 12-step programs. They're free, for God's sake. And you mentioned a bunch of addiction. Guess what? They have a 12-step program for every single one of those addictions you mentioned.
Yeah.
To show up and say, I need help. My life is unmanageable. My life is not unmanageable in that I can't pay my mortgage and I'm not homeless and I'm not hungry. That's not the way my unmanageability shows up when I'm working 13 hours in one day. That's
Yeah.
unmanageable.
Mhm.
That is not healthy. So I've had to come to understand how the impact of my family has affected me, particularly addiction. It is a learned behavior. And you drop one and you pick up the other, but there's support and there's help. So how do we change gears? Take responsibility. Get support.
That was a very important point to make. It is very genetic and is it's good to have the fingers on that pulse because it shows up in different ways. And people try to minimize the effect of addiction,
Mm,
especially
mm,
if that person is successful and functioning. And unfortunately, the people outside who see this person as a successful person often do not know the trauma that the intimate people are suffering because of this addiction. And when you see something falling apart, like a marriage, a family, you're like, oh, that came out of nowhere. To you,
mm,
it did. But you don't know the effects of that behavior or that addiction, unfortunately. And addiction should be treated like a disease process. It is a disease. A person cannot just put down the bottle, put down that cigarette, or stop going to that casino and gamble, or stop spending money on, pornography or whatever it is. If they could have done it on their own, they would have
They
done.
would have. They would have. Nobody wants to be out of control. Nobody.
Nobody. So it takes a community. There's that saying, it takes a village. It takes a village. It takes a community. It takes people holding the person accountable and also providing the necessary support so the person can live a fulfilled life, whatever that looks like. But also, you cannot want it for somebody. They have to want it. They have to recognize that this is a problem. They have to recognize that this behavior is causing friction in maybe the part of their life that nobody gets to see. Because you know what? The glamour of being a success or being a provider or being, that, person that presents a certain way in the community, that glamour is there. You may never lose that luster, but inside, you're falling apart. So if you know a person or you're listening to us and you have an addiction, there's no justifying it. As much as you can say, oh well, at least it's not drugs, at least it's not alcohol, at least it's not this.
Can I say something right
Sure,
there?
please.
Thank God I'm not addicted to heroin
Mm,
the way maybe my siblings were. Thank God that I'm addicted to food, because if it were heroin, I'd be dead. I would have been overdosed a long time ago. So, one of the things that's important is don't compare. Addiction is addiction. The malady, the struggle, the out of controlness is the same, whether you're shopping at Bloomingdale's or you're drinking yourself to death. It is the same experience of what does it feel like to feel so out of control. It is heavy. There is no excuse. Hold people accountable, but don't hold them in shame. Those are two very different things. Also, holding people accountable means I support you, but I don't enable you. I support you, but I don't enable you. I care for you, but I don't carry you. And so your comment of only the person who's struggling can help themselves. That's, you have to start saying, you know what? I have an issue. I need help. And then help opens up. They say when the student is ready, the teacher
master
shows up.
shows up.
Just say, God, help me. And God will help you. But then when God puts all these people in front of you, or programs, or services, or help, take it.
Absolutely.
Explore it. Be curious.
Absolutely. So, Santa, what do you say about family members? So, let's say is an addiction that has been injurious to a partner. So, whether is drinking, okay, that is causing less than stable home environment, or whether is pornography that is causing emotional distance, or gambling that is causing financial strain, or even any drug addiction for that matter. And it feels like time after time, over a long period of time, there's a problem. However, we know with addiction, people make promises, but they don't keep it. So, what would you say to a partner that is injured from a situation like that without being an enabler, like you so sweetly put? Without being an enabler, but also from a place of self protection. What should a partner do? Like, I can support you from a distance because sometimes, let's be honest, addiction leads to a family breakdown. So, how can a person support a person that has an addiction that is not holding them in shame, but at the same time not wanting to be injurious to themselves?
Your watchers or listeners may be thinking, why is she smiling? Why is she laughing? Well, because I'm joyous. But because I said earlier, for every single addiction that you mentioned, there's a 12-step meeting. Guess who else? There's this 12-step meeting for those who
Partners.
live with addicts. I went to adult children of alcoholics. That was my very first 12-step program. My daddy was an alcoholic. But there's Al-Anon. There's
Mhm.
Alateen. You have teenagers in your family and your spouses are addicted or they're having struggles. Take your children to Alateen. And I'm a pusher of 12-step program because it's free, it's accessible, and now since COVID, it is worldwide and online. There's no excuse. But get support. You can't manage living with an addict and seeing your family fall apart. Get
Right.
support. It is not easy for me to say to a mother, your son is overdosed again, throw him out of the house. That person, and especially Black and brown people, we take care of our folks. That's not going to work. But get the support that you need to understand addiction. Recovery is what we need in addiction, but recovery comes with lots of relapses or lots of whatever you call them, breaks, or
Yeah.
lots of I stop and I go. Be prepared for that. Understand that being an enabler means you clean up. Like every weekend, my daddy would get drunk and break things and throw things. But by Monday morning, the girls of the house had cleaned everything up. There was no sign that my daddy had gotten drunk on Sunday night. That's enabling. We need to allow people to see the consequences of their behavior. It's not, where do you learn that? So In order to be able to sustain someone with an addiction within a family, you need support. You can't do that on your own. And by the way, 12-step programs talk a lot about God, God of your understanding. God could be a table, or God could be this white man up there in the sky somewhere. We need a lot of faith. We need strength. We need community. You mentioned the village. We need community. And so here's a gift that's been given to us, that some white old man, drunk person somewhere 70, 100 years ago, however long it's been, decided we need each other. We need to support each other. We need to hold each other accountable. That's what 12-step programs are. So what do I say to a family that's struggling? Get support. It may not be from a 12-step program. Churches are now acknowledging the power and the damage of addiction. Talk to
Mhm.
your pastor, you know? I mean, I don't care who you talk to. Get support for your family and know that you cannot manage it on your own, and do not enable. They say that in order to come into recovery, you have to hit bottom. But the only way you're going to hit bottom is if you start cleaning up the spit, if you stop working harder so you can have more money so the addict can gamble. And anger does not heal. Anger just creates more and more resentment. So get support so you can run your family in a way that says, I'm not here to enable you. I will not allow you to continue to pretend this is not okay.
Yeah,
But I'm also not going to curse you. I'm also not going to shame you. Right. And at some point, it does mean I leave and I go somewhere where I can take care of myself, my children, like whatever, hard decisions.
very hard decisions. And in a person making that decision, what I have seen is long tolerance and a long broken promises. And everybody has a limit. Everybody has a space where it's like, okay, understanding that addiction, whether they understand it or not, they know the toll that this behavior has taken on them, on the
Yeah.
family, on the children, and they decide maybe it's time to do something different. Maybe I just need to remove myself. Maybe that would wake you up. And what do you say about the people who guilt a person who has experienced this and just decide to do something different for themselves or for the children?
Well, when you said guilt, I laughed because I wasn't sure where you were going. So, guilting the addict doesn't work. Remember, they're an addict because they can't cope, because they can't manage, because it's self-medicating. So
Yes.
don't guilt them. Either decide that you will do what you need to do to take care of yourself or not.
Okay.
And then society that looks at the person who makes a decision to say, I surrender. Look me up when you're done with your addiction. When you're in recovery, when you're getting support, the people who judge those who make the decision to save themselves are so wrong for doing that. So wrong. You don't know. There's a saying in Spanish. I don't know whether it'll sound the same way in English. Nobody knows what's in the pot but the person who's stirring it. You don't know when someone's made, you don't know how long they've waited. You don't know, right? So what I would say is take action. You said something about tolerating, 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 tolerating. Some people tolerate for so long. I get the clients, adult people who come to me and said, I wish my mama had left my daddy. Because in the process of tolerating and tolerating and tolerating and tolerating, yeah, you're damaging. So you give it your best, have a limit, set some conditions, offer support. And support can look like, look, I'll come with you to the doctor, to the church, to the 12-step me, whatever, and then make a decision to get support for the decision that you need to make. Because a lot of people will judge you for breaking up the family or the marriage, but you need to stand strong in understanding that you can't save an addict if an addict doesn't want to be saved. You have to save yourself and save your children, please. Doesn't mean that people don't get second chances, but you're going to show me that you're on a different path. Because an addict will walk down the same street over and over again, fall in the same hole, and say, oh, what happened? I didn't see that coming. So somebody who's not in the midst of the illness needs to make some decisions. So please don't judge those who make choices. When they're tired, they're tired. Support is what we need to support each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And
Absolutely.
For anybody listening, if you're actively addicted to anything, there's no shame in asking for help. And for those who support and you have been supportive and you've hoped for different, please understand if you are a comfort blanket or if you're the coverer or the cleaner upper, like Santa said, you're enabling, and it's going to not take long for you to be exhausted and tired. And for those that have made a difficult decision to either remove themselves or put some distance while still being supportive, people will talk. People will have their idea of what you should do or they think you should do. You wear the shoes, you know where it pinches. Do what works for you,
That's right.
because we need your mental health stable. If that goes, not much is there. So,
That's
Santa, please, I
yes.
love this conversation, and I don't think we talked about everything. It'll be great for us to reconvene and maybe have a live session. But before we end our conversation, please, I want you to tell our listening audience where they can find you, um,
Hmm.
your website, the what you offer, and how they can work with you should they want to work with you from anywhere around the world.
Yes. Well, I am a clinical social worker licensed in 9 states. Another gift of COVID. Like I had to follow my clients. You can find me, my website. My website is hpbysanta.net. HP stands for Holistic Psychotherapy or Higher Power or whatever you want to make the H and the P. BY Santa. So it's hpbysanta.net. All the information you want to know about me is on there. I'm all on social media, starting with, the business one, LinkedIn, but you
Yeah.
can find me on TikTok. Please follow me on TikTok, on Instagram, on YouTube, Santa Molina Marshall, just my name, or HP by Santa will get you there. I offer individual, family, and group support, psychotherapy. And so my new baby, I want to talk about my new baby. I'm just going to throw
No,
this in
no,
there.
no, you talk. Don't.
Babies, I mean, the young ones, the elders, the baby within you, because we all need loving tenderness, all of us, at whatever age we are. When people talk about the wounded healer, I say, no, there was a wounded child. The healer's the adult. The healer's the one who wrote the book. The healer's the one who's sitting here with you today. But there was a wounded child, and that child needs care even today. My new baby is a program that has been birthed from the desire to really support professional women leaders. And by leaders, I mean anyone who identifies as a leader. You could be the leader of your organization, the leader of your church, or maybe even the leader of your home. The criteria is you self identify as a leader. You're a woman of color. So I don't care what color you is, you're a woman of color. It's the Freedom Reset for Women of Color Leaders. It's a 6-month hybrid program, some online stuff, some live retreats, one-on-ones, group work, and community, more than anything, community. Yes, I have developed a curriculum that says if you are successful, meaning by definition of this society, meaning you have money, you have whatever degrees, you running an organization, but you're feeling less satisfied, unhappy, tired, stressed, drinking. We already talked about addiction. If you are a successful businesswoman who is struggling, doesn't feel free, maybe you don't drink, maybe you do everything right, but you're exhausted at the end of the day, or you've been divorced twice because you don't make time for your marriage, or you don't have friends because you don't cultivate. Or as a client would say, I had to call my friend, say, can I come and rock on your rocking chairs? Because at my home, I don't take time. So if you're a successful businesswoman, a leader in your own stripe and league, but you want more joy, more freedom, more time for yourself and the things that are important to you, you don't have a hobby, then this program is for you. It's a 6-month. Again, the name of the program is the Freedom Reset for Women of Color Leaders, 6 months. Let yourself be taken care of. Learn what it is that you need to learn that keeps you trapped. And it's not another degree. I got tons of those. It's not another degree. Learn what keeps you trapped. Learn what agreements you've made. Maybe even before you were born. Learn about the medicine that you carry. what works for you. Learn in community how to support each other, how to love each other, how to be nurtured. Come to the Freedom Reset for Women Leaders to come and sit around a fire and talk about who you are, to nurture that inner child that I mentioned, to color in a coloring book. Let's put aside all the titles and all the money you make, and let's really tend to our body, mind, and spirit. So I'm excited about my program. Anybody wants to know more about it, just hit me up and I'd be delighted to share with you. There's an ebook and a webinar coming soon so that people can hear more about it. But that's my baby. I'm excited because, I am tired of seeing successful women who are unhappy. They
Yeah.
look like they should be happy, but they're exhausted and they're not living their best life. When are you going to live your best life? Money, as much as capitalism tells us money is the deal, money is not freedom.
Yeah. Um, I call them the golden handcuffs. When we have the golden handcuffs of weekly or bi-weekly pay that cover things, it is necessary because we live in a society where we've acquired bills and necessities and things that we need to survive. And we kind of like
Absolutely.
need that to pay for that. And sometimes we forget ourselves in the process of
Yeah.
working and doing the things and being the fabulous C-suite person,
Or you
managing.
don't have we got to keep up. People of color like keeping up. You
We
guys
like keep
have money,
up,
right?
and that
And we also have the commitment. Here's the thing. We like to keep up. We also have the commitment to our family. Like
yes,
I've worked with so many people, women who say, I got to keep going because I don't want my daughters to go through what I went through. The generational curse that says slavery is real and sometimes we're the ones enslaving ourselves. When you set the handcuffs, I like saying our lifestyles
yeah,
are our prisons.
yeah.
We've created these lifestyles that require us to give and do and give and do at the cost of our own health and wellness.
Thank you for that. So for anybody who didn't catch or maybe you missed the letter, don't worry about it. We got you. So all of the websites and all of the things will be in the show notes. So you just click in and you find it and easy access. And please reach out, just like Santa said, reach out if you have additional questions, you want to learn more about the Women's Summit, everything about that. She will go over it with you or at least provide you with information or the ebook she said. So
I
yes,
forgot something really important to mention. And
yeah,
if you need to make a little bit of extra money, because we just talked about money, right? Talk to me because I have a pretty high commission for anyone who recommends anyone who signs up for the Freedom Reset for Women of Color Leaders. So again, helping each other.
that's beautiful. Affiliate marketing, anybody? So reach out. And I like that we have carved out something for us because when in the general scheme of things, when women are being considered or whatever, women of color usually don't get seats at that table. So I applaud you for doing this. And I'm
Thank you.
very grateful that you're doing this. Thank you so much for coming on. And for everybody who listened, we talked about so many things. We talked about wounds, healing, being a healer. You have to take care of yourself. And also, with addiction and things of that nature. My prayer and hope and belief is that you walked away with something. And whether it affects you directly, whether it affects somebody within your circle, your family, your community, it really does take all of us to look out for each other and we'll take care of each other. So please take care of yourself. Thank you, everybody. Take care of yourself. And
Hey,
Santa,
everyone.
we need to plan on going on a live. I think people will benefit from that as well.
I would love to do that. I've so enjoyed myself. Thank
Oh
you
my
so much.
goodness, I'm so blessed
Thank
to hear
you.
that.
Blessings to you and
Blessings to
everything.
you too. Thank you. Thank
Absolutely.
you. I
Be well.
receive it. Thank you, everybody. Take care of yourself.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to Unshelling Medicine Podcast. If you want to stay up to date with the latest episodes, make sure to hit that subscribe button on your favorite podcast platform. If you enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to leave us a review. Follow us on social media at Altruistic Scribe on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. We share additional tips, updates, and health-related content that you won't want to miss. Have any questions or topics you'd like us to cover in future episodes? Reach out to us at altruisticscribeco.com. We're always eager to hear from our listeners and tackle the health topics that matter most to you. Until next time, stay healthy and take care.